All right, folks, we're going to get underway. Can you guys hear me in the back? That's a joke. They're very good. So thank you so much for joining us for the 4th Annual School Communication PR panel discussion. This year, we're lucky enough to have 3 fantastic presenters. I'm going to introduce them to you in just a moment. This year, we're focusing on entertainment, travel, and tourism. If any point in time you have questions, certainly feel free. We have a list of prepared questions from our PRSSA chapter, which has been so great in helping us prepare this event. We're going to use those for our conversations, but at any point in time, if you want to interject and have a question to ask, certainly feel free. Around 4 o'clock, we're going to open up the audience, though, for all questions and answers. If you want to wait till then, you can certainly do so as well. So without further ado, for anybody who doesn't know me, I'm Professor Sullivan from the School of Communication, also the advisor of our PRSSA chapter. I'm simply here, though, to ask these questions. Our 3 panelists here, which you're going to meet now in just a moment, are our experts, so please feel free to fire away. We're going to have to end right around 4:15 today, a little bit earlier, but right afterwards, please feel free to go outside, and all of our panelists will be able to meet with you and answer any of the questions as well after that time. So without further ado, here we go. To my immediate left, we have Laurel Month, an account supervisor at Coin PR Travel. In her role there, she's working with different clients, including the Cayman Islands Department of Tourism, Mohegan Gaming and Entertainment, Outrigger Hospitality Group, and more. In addition to supervising her colleagues on the travel team, she's also responsible for maintaining the day-to-day communication and responsibilities for her current clients, developing press materials, maintaining relationships with editors and journalists, and supporting media trips, as well as celebrity red carpet events. Laurel has a passion for the travel, hospitality, and entertainment industries with more than 6 years of experience, working with some of the clients I mentioned, also including Motel 6 and G6 Hospitality, Hornitos Tequila, as well as Hard Rock International. With a proven track record of generating extensive coverage in top-tier outlets, Laurel has used her knowledge of the media landscape and the latest pop culture trends to leverage key media opportunities while building trust, credibility, and reputation for her clients. Folks, let's welcome Laurel Month as part of our panel. To her immediate left, we have Erica Campbell, Senior Account Director at NJF PR and MMGY Global Company. Erica has lived in Baltimore, Bangkok, Jersey City, and Newcastle, just to name a few, fueling a fascination with world cultures that inspires her insightful PR work. Erica taps into these strengths as a Senior Account Director at NJF in New York. 10 years into her career, Erica has driven the PR campaigns for global brands like MasterCard, Starwood, and Uber, drawn travelers to South Dakota, Los Cabos, and Washington, D.C., developed strategic campaigns for Intrepid Travel, and won 8 Hospitality Sales and Marketing Association International Awards for her clients. When not inspiring people to go places, she and her husband visit the second home in Thailand with their children Amelia and Faris. Erica appreciates cultures that are vastly different than her own and names Kenya, Japan, and India as her favorite destinations. Ladies and gentlemen, Erica Campbell. And last but not least, to her left, we have Corinne Lamore, Senior Account Supervisor at Wagstaff Worldwide. Her love for travel and creative writing has helped her implement a wide range of award-winning PR campaigns. Since beginning her career in 2008, she has worked to elevate vacation destinations around the world, including Chile, Sarasota, Florida, Providence, Rhode Island, and the ongoing developments in Atlantic City right here in New Jersey. She's also relaunched the I Love New York campaign for Empire State Development and has educated travelers on the need for travel insurance with, quote, the world's unluckiest traveler campaign for Travel Guard. As a Senior Account Supervisor at Wagstaff Worldwide, she continues to elevate the destination of Telluride, Colorado, as one of the country's leading ski resorts and a top summer destination, positions all of Scandinavia as an ideal weekend leisure destination through her work with Scandinavian Airlines, and has launched hotels and resorts throughout the world. A beach bum at heart, Corinne spends many summer weekends on the Jersey Shore or plotting her next summer getaway. And who doesn't? Ladies and gentlemen, to our left, Corinne Lamore. And I guess we'll start off our panel by just giving a chance for each of our presenters to give us some background in terms of where you've gotten to where you are today. I believe our microphones are on, and that'll give me some time to kind of come over there and sit with you all. So Laura, if you want to get us underway, maybe just a little bit more of your backstory.
Yeah, no problem. So I started at Coin as an intern. It was my winter semester going into senior year. I took 4 weeks out of my winter break and just worked at Coin. So I didn't have the traditional internship, but at the time I was working on a bunch of different projects, started off with Hard Rock, and then I knew that they needed an AC right away. So by the time, I remember this time, it was like March Madness, I knew I already had the job at Coin by the time I graduated. So I started graduated on a Sunday, started full-time Wednesday. I've been there ever since.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and I love it. I think the fact that I work on consumer entertainment and travel gives me a lot of different experiences. Like I said, I started with Hard Rock. I dipped into spirits with Skinny Girl, Hornitos Tequila. Now I'm pulled back onto travel where I'm working on Mohegan Sun, which is a lot like Hard Rock. And, there's a lot of different things that I work on for Cayman that dips into spirits and culinary. So, my world has kind of come full circle since I started as an intern. And, I'm happy to be here and talk about it.
So I'm so excited to talk to you guys today. I actually started my career teaching English. I joined a Teach for Thailand program from my school, Loyola, in Baltimore. It was a very scary proposition to do that because I wasn't joining the corporate world in New York, which a lot of my friends were doing. I thought, I love to travel. Why not go to Asia for a year, kind of kill some time during the recession, come back, maybe things will be better. I fell in love while I was there, which is what kept me there for 7 years. So I lived in Bangkok for that long. But I was not a great teacher. So I went to what I studied, which was advertising and PR. I joined Banyan Tree, which is a 5-star hotel chain. And I did marketing communications for them before joining Weber Shandwick, which is a multinational PR agency. That's where I worked on MasterCard, I did Spotify, I did Starwood, Hotels.com, various types of clients. And about 3 years ago, moved back home because I missed my parents a lot. So brought our daughter with us and joined MMGY Global to focus on travel PR.
I had a couple of pretty interesting internships during my time at Monmouth, which is where I got my undergraduate degree. And they ranged from very small shop tech PR firm, which I knew was a realm I just didn't want to be in. I'm still on an iPhone 6, I think. It's just not my world. And then a couple of good lifestyle PR internships that range from fashion to a little bit of the entertainment industry, and also some restaurants, which is where I got into the hospitality industry. And then I started with an agency based in New York, Lou Hammond and Associates, pretty shortly after graduating, and just continued on the travel and tourism path since then.
Fantastic. And sorry about that, folks. Let's jump into some of these questions we have here from our peer SSA. First one being public relations, 9 to 5, a little more than 5, and particularly in your space, be it entertainment previously or the travel and tourism now. What are those hours, however many hours you're putting in? What are they like? Can you give us a behind the scenes, kind of pull the curtain away maybe? Whoever cares to chime in.
So it really is always on. And when I say that, I mean on my commute into Midtown, I live in Jersey City, I send emails on my way in, and I usually get there like 9 or 9:30, and then I'm there probably until like 6. But then I go home, I have dinner with my family, and then I'm back on my computer. And the same is true when we're traveling. So even when we're on the plane, if there's Wi-Fi, I'm on it and I'm working. And even when I'm in the midst of a press trip and I'm escorting journalists around, when I go back to my room at night, I'm working again. So the thing is that sounds daunting and it sounds like not fun, but when you love what you do, it's not a bad thing. Like I love writing emails to journalists. I love pitching them. So it's not so bad that I'm always on because I really enjoy it.
Yeah, I can just add to that. I think that, we host a lot of media, and for me working with the Department of Tourism in the Cayman Islands, I'm not always physically on island with them. So if I have a journalist, I'm on WhatsApp because that's how my clients can communicate with me and, anything that happens, same with, time differences. I have journalists, or clients in Hawaii, so I'll stay late because I know that that's when my clients are working and that's when I can get stuff done. So, if you're pitching media in LA or, across the country, it helps to be on the same time zone as them. So, I wake up early, I get my pitches out, and, it goes on all day.
Yeah, I think just it also depends on your client base and where they're located. I've had a work schedule where the first thing I do in the morning is I communicate with my European clients, and then I go home and have dinner, and then I'm on Skype with someone in Thailand or wherever it is, because that's just, you have to be a little bit flexible. But again, I think like you were saying, when you're talking about eating and drinking and traveling all day, it's not the worst.
And how did you folks know when you finally found this? Corinne, you mentioned you tried out tech, it wasn't for you, but how did you know that this was for you?
I think after I got my footing for a couple of years at my first job, and you're given a little bit more responsibility in terms of, leading press trips and building out strategy, and you get to a point where you're able to see some of the ideas that you've conceptualized come to fruition and see those results for your clients and be able to take that sense of ownership is when I think it all kind of clicked for me. When you're really able to see a full campaign come to light from the conception to the results, it's really rewarding, and I think it's also really a special experience when you're able to see how those results affect your client's bottom line. I think that when you're dealing with some corporate clients, sometimes you don't always get to see how that actually affects what they do day to day. So when you do get that kind of feedback, it's really rewarding.
Anybody else care to chime into that question?
I think it was my first placement, which means when you see your pitch in a magazine. So I was working at Banyan Tree, and we had hosted a journalist who was impossible to work with. She was very difficult. She demanded everything that she could possibly get. We gave her an all-day treatment. She fell asleep. She didn't know what it was like, so she asked for another one. And we had to give it to her because we really wanted this story. And so going through all of that and then getting the magazine and holding it and looking at the story that I helped to create. I didn't write it, but I put a lot of work into it in terms of pitching this journalist, getting her to come to the spa, getting her to experience this all-day treatment twice. That when it finally was there and I had it in my hands, I said, oh my God, this is for me. Like, I have to keep doing this. I just love this thrill. And you just never forget that.
And I think travel is really rewarding in that aspect because from finding them and going through the research of finding, like, can they accept this trip? Is this a fit for them? And then building out that itinerary, seeing their experience, then talking to them after the fact and seeing how great their trip was and how it's going to come into this like beautiful story is really like the best aspect of just working on travel. But I think in general, for me, it was, like you said, getting that placement. I remember just being hungry for coverage and wanting to, get my clients in the best of the best publications. I saw a piece of a slide from the food and beverage director at Hard Rock, and she was saying how speakeasy, like those Mad Men style cocktails, were coming back. And I remember drafting a pitch for Hard Rock, like pulling the cocktail recipes together in People magazine, Cosmopolitan, and I was an account coordinator, to see people running cocktails from Hard Rock Cafe. I was like, this is for me. And ever since then, from Hard Rock, I fell into spirits, and it all just, clicked together.
And to kind of piggyback off of that, how do you keep up with the media landscape? And we're not just talking about domestic opportunities, now international opportunities. Is there any flavor of cross-cultural communication going on as well, dealing with these destinations?
Well, for me, mostly it is U.S. based. Some press trips I'll look into the U.K., but I am mostly looking at U.S. media, so I don't have that cross-cultural necessarily language barrier. But I'm just constantly reading, constantly checking out people's Instagrams and seeing where they're traveling, following those media on social media as well, because I want to know where they're going and I want to know what they're covering. Yeah.
Okay. And to piggyback off that question, one of the things that came up in our meeting, our PRSA last week, was the Fire Festival. And looking at it from a travel, tourism perspective, it's got a flavor of influencer. If you dig deeper into the scenario, any comments as a professional in this space on that scenario? We'll go with that phrasing.
I can start just because Cayman Islands just celebrated their inaugural Kaboo Festival, and it was a big talking point because Kaboo started in Del Mar, and they brought it to Cayman Islands just this year for the first time, and the Fire Festival documentary literally came out a week before this February press trip. And I just think that from a destination perspective, it broke my heart to see what it did from a destination perspective. But I also think you see this a lot. Not Firefest was such a big example, but you see social media influencers that are promoting their presets or promoting their things on Instagram, their classes, and then people take them and they're it's not what they promised it was going to be. So I think it's happening a lot, and Fire Festival was just the biggest impact that I've seen, and then it trickles down through everything we do.
I guess it boils down to trust. So we inherently, and this is tending to decline now, some studies are saying, but we typically inherently trust the news, meaning you read the New York Times, you know that they're fact-checking, you know that they're doing everything they can to maintain their credibility. Influencers don't necessarily have that foundation. So if we don't trust them, I mean, do they deserve that anyway? Like, should we be even looking to them to be sources of some really positive information or things that we can base our lives off of? I have some clients who will pay influencers. They'll pay them hefty sums to do a post on Instagram. And I have some clients who absolutely refuse to. So it really depends on how much your client values them. And we get paid to counsel them on both ways of saying you should be paying these people or not. But I think as a PR professional, it's still to be determined in terms of what the actual value is.
Anybody else want to chime in on that conversation about the value of the influencer? Or perhaps maybe the frequency of the request from your clients for influencers?
Yeah,
too?
I think for us too, at my agency, it's still kind of mixed feelings about influencers. I do have some clients who are very much on board with it. Across the board, we try to look for opportunities where it is strictly for trade, meaning that if we can host an influencer without paying outright and just having them experience or stay or eat or drink or whatever it is, and then posting, I think what is good about influencers is that they're very much more amenable to laying out exactly what it is you'll get prior to the experience versus a traditional journalist who, for the most part, if they're reputable, they're never going to guarantee any type of coverage before they get sent anywhere. So, it's up to us to kind of gauge and to make those relationships and make sure that they are a trusted resource and they will, come away from this experience or trip or meal or whatever it is and be able to cover it. Versus an influencer where we can actually send them a physical agreement and say that you agree to post X amount of times and use these hashtags. So, while there are benefits to it, again, there are some instances where you don't really know what you're going to get from these influencers, and it could backfire. You look at a situation like the New York Times just did something over the weekend about those flower fields in Southern California and how they're just being taken over by influencers and to the point of kind of devastation and ruin, and people can't just go and enjoy it. So, I think it's an interesting topic, and there are definitely pros and cons there.
And speaking more about the space, entertainment, travel, tourism, are you seeing definitions between those two spaces? Is there more of a blending and overlapping where some of the entertainment world is starting to really kind of seep into the travel and tourism? And any comments on that?
I don't work in entertainment PR, but what I would say is there's opportunities for crossover from any vertical in PR that, like, we would engage celebrities, and we have Asbury Park as a client. And through my colleagues' relationships, when they relaunched Asbury Lanes, they had a connection to Bruce Springsteen to get him to perform for free. That's unheard of. So, that is a crossover, a very clear one between entertainment and travel PR. So I think that the ability to think outside of the box, to answer your question in a different way, is really valuable. So when we don't just box ourselves into only thinking about travel and tourism, when we read a lot about what's going on in celebrity news or in any media vertical, what we're doing is we're enhancing what we're able to offer to our clients by giving them creative ideas that sort of extend their reach.
And I can add to that. I do think that there's really no fine line between travel and entertainment a lot of the time. Like for Mohegan Sun, that's one of our travel-based clients, and we do red carpet events. They have an arena. They celebrity appearances almost every weekend. Ariana Grande just filmed her latest music video at Mohegan Sun over the past weekend. So like that type of stuff. They didn't even know it was happening. We just got an update. Oh, she's here and she's filming her music video. So we do get to pitch that out then after the fact. So Nigel Barker visits the Cayman Islands. So anytime we have celebrities on island, we do pitch it out. So while it's a travel client, I'm constantly talking to celebrity and entertainment media. Unless I have a red carpet, I'm not necessarily hosting them because they really just want the coverage and the tip or the gossip. But they're like with Kaboo, I was looking at entertainment media to go to Cayman, so we were pitching E! News and Cosmopolitan and Elite Daily and those types of media to come down to Cayman, where any other time might not have a reason to bring them, but because, you know, we had the Chainsmokers and Jason Derulo and all those celebrities on island, that gave me a reason to talk to them for sure.
I think one of the things you've been touching upon, all three of you so far, is the importance of media relations, you know, not just in public relations, but particularly in these spaces. A lot of our students haven't got a chance to really pitch the media yet per se. Can you maybe want to give us maybe a challenging moment you had in your career doing that process, or maybe some tips on how to be successful? It seems to be this enigma everyone's trying to crack, just what's the right formula to get those media placements?
I'll give you an example of a time I failed really hard, and then that'll probably teach you what not to do. CBS Sunday Morning is like a dream placement for me because I just love that show. My parents watched it, my grandparents watched it. It's just a great program. And I pitched this story about a woman, her name is Becky. She's the first overland truck driver in East Africa. My client, Intrepid Travel, runs tours in Kenya. These are women's only expeditions. It's meant to give you exposure to women-led experiences that you wouldn't have access to otherwise. So anyway, I draft this pitch. I pitch the producer. He immediately says no. Like, that's it. An email back to me, no. And I'm like, all right, let's find out why. So I respond and I say, what's wrong with this? Is it too short of a time frame? Like, is it not interesting enough to your audience? Like, what's going on here? And he said, it just sounds like product placement disguised as a feminist story. Ouch, right? So I'm going to go back to him, and I'll tell you how I'm reworking my pitch. I'm getting more in depth into what Becky's story is. I'm not talking so much about my client. I'm talking about her impact in the area, the significance to the children in the area, what she symbolizes in terms of the growth of women in this male-dominated field. I'm taking Intrepid out of it, which my client will be fine with in the end if they end up going there. But it takes understanding the context and the background of what that producer wants in order to hopefully be successful. So keep watching Sunday Morning, maybe you'll see it.
Does anybody else care to comment on the pitching process, working with the media?
I think just, you know, do your research, and something that I tell everyone on my team all the time is to just ask yourself, what are the stories that you want to read? Like, just start there. What's going to be interesting to you? And then just read anything and everything within that realm. And, you know, think about who it is you want to target, why you're targeting them. I think that a little bit of social media stalking is, like, definitely great, and maybe just don't be so upfront with the fact that you have been stalking them in your email to them. But, you know, I think it helps to show, you know, why this is relevant to them and their readers, obviously. And the more legwork that you do on the back end, the better. I think that we all know that the traditional media landscape is continuing to shift and change and dwindle a little bit. So the more you've laid it out for them in a way that's, you know, clear cut and comprehensive, and you do have photos, because that's going to be important to them as well, you know, the easier it'll be, and, you know, they'll understand that you get it, and they'll be a little bit more responsive. And, you know, even though, like, great that you went back and you were able to kind of state your case a little bit more, like, definitely make sure that you have the information they need and anticipate those follow-up questions so that you can get back to them in a timely manner. You know, their time is very precious these days.
Laura, do you care to comment as well on that?
I
Or?
was going to say, your pitch was probably really good in the first place for them to even answer, because if it was, you know, sometimes they just won't even answer. But I do think that, like, researching, knowing your media, not just using, like, a cookie cutter pitch is so important. Like, my team, we like to, like, reference articles that they've done in the past, like, hey, I saw you covered this, this, and this. This is why I think you'd really love to cover this, you know. Or if you say something's a trend, like, you mention other brands. Like I think that it's okay to, like, I do, like, hide your brand name in the subject line because it might be too promotional for them. Try to, you know, make it more about the consumer, more about, you know, your audience or whoever the reader is. And then I think it's important to, like, you know, reference other brands. If you say, hey, you know, Hilton is on trend to be doing, you know, doing this for their guests, but, you know, these other brands are doing it too. So it's really, you know what I mean, it's on the rise. And I think for you to do your research, it kind of helps write their story for them. A lot of journalists are writing, like, 6 stories a day. So if any research that you can do, make your pitch short and make it, like, language that they can use. I think a lot of the times I know I have a good pitch because a journalist will take my pitch and make it their story. you know, so you're helping them too.
And in talking about all this hard work that goes into this job, can you look back and think of some of the more challenging activations or campaigns you worked on that kind of became some of your more proudest moments when you look back?
I can start just for something fun. When I first got pulled onto travel, I used to be working on Hornitos Tequila, and they said, you're going to be on the travel team, you know, Cayman Islands, Outrigger Resorts, great. But your first project is Motel 6. And what we did was, so Motel 6, we couldn't send journalists to stay there. We didn't do anything like that, but they wanted to just do like a roundup, you know, what can we do to get summer coverage? And Motel 6 is a quirky brand. We found the top 6 quirkiest summer festivals, and we made plaques and we nominated them, and you know, it was like just this random campaign, but we did national outreach, we did local market outreach, and you know, we got some coverage for the brand where we normally they wouldn't have gotten any coverage that summer if it weren't for that random festival campaign.
Anyone else care to comment on that?
When I worked with the Atlantic City Convention and Visitors Bureau, I started working with them about 2 years prior to the recession. So the messaging was all very much like glitz and glam and over-the-top spa packages and, you know, the gambling aspect. And then 2008 came, and the messaging very quickly had to shift to, you know, what else can be done and why Atlantic City is still a relevant getaway. So I think just kind of being able to think very quickly and be adaptable, and the messaging became very much these sort of, you know, one-tank getaways. And we did a lot of coverage around, you know, the family-friendly aspects of Atlantic City and where, you know, how Atlantic City is relevant for a small family. So I think just getting coverage on a destination like Atlantic City that focuses a little bit more on some non-traditional aspects, the non-gaming aspects. It was, yeah, great to see that you can, you know, kind of shift gears a little bit and think about what's happening in the news to maintain relevancy.
Erica, do you want to chime in as well?
The most challenging client, but the one I love the most, is Berkshire Hathaway Travel Protection. So when I tell you travel insurance, your eyes might glaze over, but they're an incredibly innovative company. But it's hard to sustain news for someone whose news already happened a couple years ago. So they launched, were the most innovative product in the market, but then the news cycle moves on. So how do you sustain momentum for a company like that? And we had invited our client to our own research launch, because MMGY Global produces a research study every year. We've done it for about 30 years now. And what that did is it informed their own research. So they created their own study all about travel insurance. And what we're able to do is pull data and stats from that to pitch them on a continual basis. So it's a challenge for a lot of clients, is like, when there's nothing happening, how can you make sure that they're still talked about? And this was just a creative way to keep them in the news.
Those are all fascinating answers. I know we're probably right around the 4 o'clock hour. We want to make sure we get the microphone out to our students who are attending as well. I'll kind of ask one question that kind of transition us. You know, you're all in senior roles, but at one point you were in the shoes of a lot of our students that are here. You know, be it bringing on an intern for the first time, or an employee, or grooming someone on your team, maybe some of the traits you look for, some of the early missteps somebody can make, but that's okay, because there is a tomorrow. Maybe if you all want to kind of comment on that, and we'll pass the microphone for any questions in the audience.
Be as engaged as possible. I'm looking in this audience, and I can see people here who look really hungry for whatever it is that we're feeding you. Keep that. Like, be as ambitious as you can, and look for as many opportunities as you can to learn, because when I interview account coordinators, which is an entry-level position at our agency, I don't really care what you studied. You could have studied history and want to work for our agency, but if you express a genuine interest in what we're doing and why you want to work in travel PR, that's what I latch on to. And I say, I can teach this person something. They're going to want to stay. They're going to want to absorb as much as possible. So just maintain that like drive to succeed, and a genuine interest in the companies that you're applying at.
And just to that, I think I like bring a notebook whenever you're you meet with someone, just being eager and attentive. I think attention to detail. A lot of interns and account coordinators will be pulling media lists, so making sure that every person on that list is relevant. They're still reporting for that outlet. And then we do at Coin, whether you're we do try to let interns start pitching so that they can leave their intern experience with at least some placements under their belt. So that's important. And don't be afraid. Pick up the phone and just get going with, pitching, because I think that that's one of the most important things to walk away from an internship with is, to ask to pitch and to ask for that experience, because, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, I was just going to say ask questions. When we have an intern, we want to make sure that they get the most out of it, but really that's kind of on the intern, right? We want to be able to say, they came to me and asked me if they can help on this project that they overheard this other team talking about. Don't feel like it's out of your realm, and just ask questions and participate in whatever you think is going to be interesting and whatever is going to help you get the most out of the experience.
And with that, folks, we'll open up for questions. And by the way, there are internships, multiple internships opportunities with the organizations represented by all our speakers in the back. Feel free to grab one on the way out. Questions from the audience now. We'll turn it to you. Does anybody have any questions they care to ask any of our speakers? We have a microphone here to the side if you'd like to ask. Yeah, sure, in the front.
That was loud. We can record this. I just wanted to ask, when you were in our shoes, just like Sullivan said, and you were a freshman or a sophomore, junior, when did you decide that this was the career for you, and when did you have the aspiration, the goal to go into entertainment and travel?
I can start. So I remember in high school, I wanted to be in journalism. I loved journalism. I took a class, and then, I kind of felt like my parents were like, you're always scrounging for a story, it's, maybe you would like to be in PR because then you're writing the story for your client. And I loved that aspect of it. And I went to the University of Connecticut, where we didn't have a PR program. So I was a communications major, and I really had to build that degree. And I think as I went down that path and as I learned more about PR, that's really when I decided, it's what I wanted to do. And I graduated with at least 4 internships already. So I had an internship as a junior. I did a city internship with Allison Broad, and that was, beauty and fashion, because I really thought that that's what I wanted to do. And then I realized that was not what I wanted to do. And I had already kind of known about Coin. I was from New Jersey. I knew that it was there. So the summer that I had already accepted the internship with Allison Broad, I had already talked to Coin, and I was interested in them. So then by the time, I already set up my internship, and from the time I was there, I kind of fell in love, and it was just, I knew it was for me. And because it was a big agency, I didn't really have that mindset of, am I going to be in travel or am I going to be in entertainment? It was, I want to be in PR. It had nothing to do with, the industry so much for me. It was about the career.
So I didn't know. So I studied advertising copywriting as my specialization in school. I had 2 advertising internships. And after those 2 experiences, I thought, I don't want this. I can't do this. It's too brief for what I love to write. I've always loved to write. I had a typewriter when I was a kid. That was my cool gift, was having a typewriter. And doing ad copy it didn't give me enough space to express what I wanted. So then when I got into my career, and I ended up kind of falling into PR just with my job at Banyan Tree that I mentioned before, and I got that first placement, that was it. That's when I knew. Yeah, so I think it's okay not to know right now. I think it's good that you guys are here and you're listening and you're absorbing and you're finding out. So.
I think that for me in college, along the same lines as Laurel, I wanted to do more of the journalism track. And then after taking classes in both, I think the professors that I had on the PR side were really able to illustrate, what it is that we're learning in the classroom and how that applies to what you would be doing in the field. And it just seemed to make a little bit more sense to me and click more. And I was still able to do a lot of the writing, which I also loved. But there was just, more strategy behind it. And that's kind of really, when I took it a step further and dipped my toes into some internships just to see if I liked it. And even with the tech industry internship, I knew it just affirmed that I still wanted to be in this industry, and then maybe not so much the tech side of things. So I think it's good, even if you walk away from an internship and not really liking that specific field, because it's just as important to know what you don't want to do and what you do want to do.
All right. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Amanda. I wanted to ask, aside from interning, is there anything that you would recommend upperclassmen to do, like aside from interning, like to prepare if you're interested in PR?
Yeah, I think just read
Reading.
read anything and everything you can, about the PR industry, about trends. Those are some of the questions I like to ask, our entry-level applicants and our internship applicants. What are you reading? What's interesting to you? What are the trends that you're seeing? Yeah.
Yeah. I guess be an active participant in this experience. Like, do things that stretch you outside of your comfort zone. So join any clubs or volunteer at places that maybe don't always fall into what you typically do. Because I think the more well-rounded you are, the more interesting you become. And I tend to look for that in our applicants as well, is like, what are your interests outside of work? Like, what makes you tick? Because the more exposure you have to diverse experiences, the better you are at your job, especially with PR.
And just, I agree with both those, but just adding to it, I think it's also like, in addition to just reading the news and watching the news and knowing what's going on, like now that I'm in this field, I feel like I'm seeing so many more like brand partnerships and like, be aware of like those types of cool things that are happening, because I think it'll help you, like inspire you more. Like you could be working with like a client that maybe, you think is kind of boring, but you see something in the news that they're partnering with this really cool up and coming brand, and it just kind of changes your perspective on things. So it's not so, I don't know, it just gives you a little more excitement.
Other questions from the audience? Oh, in the back there. While we're getting the microphone up there, I'll slide a question in here for you. Some things maybe not to do, at this point in time. I know you were saying these are all things to do, but is there things that sometimes when you look back, when your time as a student, you said, I wish maybe I didn't do that, or I could have spent more time here? Anything else that students can maybe reorganize? Time management maybe, one of those things to work on? Just some curiosity there.
If you're in a really challenging class, stick with it. I took microeconomics for about 2 weeks and then I stopped taking it. I wish I had stuck with it, because I think that there were things I could have learned in that class that would apply to my life now. So I feel like when it gets really tough, don't avoid that type of challenge. Just push through it.
I think keep your contacts here, like in school. Like, I think a lot of the times, like you can graduate and, oh, where did this person go? Where did that person go? Like stay connected, pay attention to what your friends are doing, and, reach out to them, keep your contacts, and, meet up with them. If you find you have another friend that has an internship in the city, like meet up with them, learn about what they're doing, because I think that keeping this network is going to be valuable.
All right, I'm very new to like PR and the whole industry of PR. I'm actually an accounting major, and I plan to get my CPA. I was just wondering if you guys, like on a daily basis, if there's any overlap in the PR field of like your company and the accounting department at all.
Definitely. Do you mean like as being an accountant in a PR agency, or? Like
No, meaning like does your job specifically have any overlap dealing with accounting or finance at all in the
Yes.
positions you're at?
For sure. So anything we do involves a budget. So from just day to day having a client that's, on retainer, so they pay us, by the year or whatever, you're budgeting that and how much my time is versus my AC and what are they billing towards. And then you have a project, they say we're doing this launch, we have $100,000, what can you do? So you need to figure out, well, am I renting an event space? Am I hiring a celebrity? Am I putting something over PR Newswire? Because that costs money. So everything that I do, before I even propose it to the client, I need to know that it falls within that budget. So everything is backed up by budget. Anything else?
I think even like financial PR, there's crossover there. So if you had interest in working for a bank, like I used to do PR for UBS, if you have interest in like MasterCard, like the payment technology space, there's a bit of crossover there in terms of like what you're learning now and what you could do in PR.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the audience? In the back there?
I just wanted to know, what's the most difficult part of your job, and how has that helped you in your position? Like, how has that pushed you or given you a drive to, like, better yourself?
I think being in an agency, it's, for me, sometimes it can just be turnover. I've been in a position a couple times where like I lose team members below me and I'm just put in a position where I have to pick up and keep going, and you don't really have time to panic or get anxious. It's just a case of picking up the pieces and doing what you have to do to get the work done. And in the end of the day, it really is rewarding, because I think that sometimes like maybe if I had someone above me to tell me what to do, like I would have asked them for direction, but in a crunch time, I don't have time. I use my judgment and make the decision, and I think it's rewarding to see that like I did that by myself. So I think a lot of the times it's just having to like pick up the pieces and move on with the project. If a pitch is lacking and, we need coverage, just to step in and hustle.
I think time management, which is kind of along the lines of what you're saying, especially on the agency side when you are dealing with, a handful of clients, 4 or 5 clients at a time, and they all are asking for your attention equally and directly and all of the time. It could be kind of hard to just know where to focus and when. And I think that just comes with experience and, being able to have a team to lean on and make sure that you are prioritizing where needs to be, and having people above you to kind of point you in the right direction and steer that ship a little bit. So I think it's practice, and I consider myself like a productive procrastinator. Like if there's something that I know I need to do that's looming over my head, I will wait till the last minute, but I will have everything else checked off my list before I get to it. So that's one of the skills that I picked up along the way.
In the essence of time, this will be our last question for today.
Thank you very much. I just have a question. What do you think about, is this going to be relevant, the traditional PR, that you're working in traditional PR, as I can understand, not the digital PR companies that is like concentrated only on pitching on the internet and social media? And regarding your statement about the influencers and hesitant with the influencers, what do you think about nearest future? Is it going to change, or we will stay in PR, like a traditional PR, and pitching mostly for the traditional media?
So I actually work at an integrated agency. So what that means is we don't just do PR, we do social media, we do creative, we do websites, we do out of home, we do everything. So I think to answer your question, it does pay to understand what all of those channels do and how PR can integrate with them. Integration is like a buzzword, but it's really important that I understand how social media works. I understand the value of influencers. Even if I personally feel a little so-so about them, I can see why they are valuable to my clients. And it also pays to understand how a website revamp might look, or what goes into the research behind a brand, so that you're not just a publicist, because that is the future. It is that clients are looking for that type of solution where you don't just say, I'm going to pitch the New York Times. You say, we're going to do this, and we're going to engage the influencers here, and we're going to suggest that you do this elsewhere. So that would just benefit you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. For sure. And what we're doing is shifting a lot of our strategy to video. So we produce video in-house, and we're also pitching it. So to your point, yes. Yeah.
Folks, we're just about out of time. How about a round of applause for our 3 panelists today? There is another class coming in, so if you want to please excuse yourselves. Our panelists will be available outside answering the questions you have. But thank you so much for coming, and we'll see you folks next year.